we will discuss different types of real world networks. I mean the popular real world networks that we generally talk about, right? So if you look at the literature, you can see that broadly there are 5 types of networks that we talk about: social network, right, biological network, information network, technological network, and language network. Okay, we will give examples of each of these one by one, but in general social networks you all know. Biological networks, I mean you can think of say protein-protein interaction networks, or say neural network, I mean interactions between neurons, food network, and so on. Information networks include World Wide Web, citation network, technological network networks include power grid, airline network, railway network. Language network includes say word co-occurrence network, and so on and so forth. We will discuss each of these one by one. In fact, I basically tell my students that you can imagine, you can think of a network from almost every data set, from almost every application, right? Network is just an abstraction of a complex system, as I mentioned earlier, right? So if you are given a simple problem, right, where a common person cannot see any network, any notion of network, right, you can think of a network out of it, right? And that's the beauty of this particular course. So let's look at social network, right? So I mean we have been discussing about Twitter network multiple times. Follower-following network, nodes are users and links can be follower-followees, and so on. Similarly, we have Facebook friendship networks where nodes are users and links are friendship relationships, and so on and so forth. And this is very obvious. We have biological network, for example, protein-protein interaction network, where nodes are proteins, and 2 proteins interact during different metabolic processes in our body, and you can connect proteins accordingly, right? Similarly, we have metabolic network where basically it describes the relationship between small say metabolites, right, and enzymes, proteins, which basically interact with them during different biochemical reactions, for example, right? This is a metabolic network, and there are tons of papers on protein-protein interaction networks, mostly in the bioinformatics, computational biology domain. You can think of other communication network like a wireless mesh kind of network, where say within an organization you can think of different routers, computers, and communications between routers. In fact, you can also think of communications through satellites. That can also be a network, right? Of course, you have a big internet network where the whole internet is also considered broadly as a network. We have scientific networks like a citation network we discussed earlier, where papers are nodes and citations are the links. This is a directed network. And we have a co-authorship network where nodes are co-authors, nodes are authors, and if 2 authors work together, right, you can think of them as co-authors and you can connect them, right? So interestingly, if you look at citation network, this is a small example of a citation network. Look at this node, right? Look at this node. They have high citations, right? In fact, since this is a directed network, you have inward edges and outward edges, right? So think of a paper which has a lot of inward edges. So inward edges indicate citations, outward edges indicate references, right? So if a paper has a lot of citations, meaning basically the paper is very important, therefore people are citing it. But if a paper say has a lot of outgoing edges, indicating a lot of references, that paper is also important. That paper might be a book, that paper might be a survey paper or a literature review paper, right? We will discuss how the notion of inward edge and outward edge basically interplay with each other, and you can think of interesting metrics, right, out of this the notion of directionality of an edge. Co-authorship network, if you see the network, right, you see that there is a close group, there is another close group here, nodes are densely connected, right? Here you see yellow nodes are densely connected, red nodes are also densely connected, right? And you know, every such group has its own identity. For example, this red group indicates researchers working on agent based models. So green group indicates researchers working in mathematical ecology, right? There is this blue group working on statistical physics and so on and so forth. So you see that a cluster, multiple such clusters basically emerge from a network, right, which might be interesting to study, and we will discuss in a separate chapter, you know, how we can detect such clusters or communities from a network. Okay. Language network, one simple example can be a co-occurrence network of words, right, where nodes can be words, and if two words co-occur together in a sentence, for example, or very close by in a sentence, say within a boundary, within a window of 3 words or 4 words, you basically connect them in the network. So nodes are words, and if two nodes co-occur together multiple times, you can connect them. For example, you see that, you know, the word like teacher, right, principal, student, they occur very frequently, they co-occur very frequently, and therefore they are connected, right? And this kind of network is very important to study, you know, to automatically detect, you know, synonymous words or say antonyms, right, or say holonym, homonym, and so on and so forth, whole bunch of things in natural language processing, right? Another example of a network is keyword co-occurrence network, where nodes are keywords, and if two keywords again co-occur together multiple times, you can connect them, right? In scientific papers, you may have seen that you need to specify keywords, right, in the paper. So now if you see that, you know, phrases like keywords like sentiment analysis and opinion mining, right, they are very close, and you see that these keywords, you know, appear together very frequently. So meaning that, you know, these phrases are very important, these phrases are actually, you know, very linked. You see here in this particular network, sentiment analysis and opinion mining, they are close by, right? And so in this network, nodes are keywords, and two keywords are connected if they co-occur together multiple times in different papers. There is another network called semantic network. Okay. In semantic network, now this is basically knowledge graph. You may have heard about the term knowledge graph, right? A knowledge base or knowledge graph, where nodes are different entities indicating different granularities of knowledges. For example, you see that cat is a mammal, right? So cat is an entity. This is a node. Mammal is a node, right? Wheel is a node. Animal is a node, and so on and so forth. So cat is a mammal, so therefore there is a link from cat to mammal, and the relationship is A, right? So this is, you can think of this as an attributed network, where ages are associated with some sort of attributes, right? Is a or has, right, and so on and so forth, lives in, and so on and so forth, right? These are different attributes of ages, right? So now this is called semantic network. Okay. Similarly, we can think of many other interesting networks like you know, terrorist network. I mentioned last day that you know, where in this particular network, nodes can be terrorists, and if two terrorists went together for a similar mission, or if two terrorists were arrested together, right, you can basically connect them through links, right? In fact, there are very interesting studies where people basically keep track of how such movement happens. I mean, I am not very aware of this, but if you look at studies, there are multiple books on, you know, how you can model such activities using networks. Okay. There is another type of network called patient network, and this is very important again in the computational biology domain, where you basically want to study how a particular epidemic spreads, or a virus spreads. So here nodes are patients, and if two patients are interacting, if two patients come closer together, you can connect them, right? So Now, if say let's assume that you have in a hospital you have this kind of network, right, and you have suddenly seen that a virus has started spreading, right. So you will immediately understand that through which path this virus has basically spread, because you know that these people have been infected, right, and you also know that these people have been frequently interacting with other people, right. So essentially it means that you may want to protect those people who have already been interacting with the already infected patients, and you want to protect them either through vaccinations or some other ways. So now we will look at a network from different angles, right. We will basically inspect the network as a whole. We then zoom in, right, and try to look at a part of the network. We further zoom in and look at even more fine-grained entities in a network, right. So we will discuss 3 levels of granularity of a network. One is called microscopic level, the other is called macroscopic level. So you have microscopic level, you have macroscopic level of analysis of a network, and in between you have something called mesoscopic level, mesoscopic view of a network. Okay. So let's start with microscopic level. So when you talk about microscopic view of a network, we basically analyze nodes and edges. Okay, we look at nodes properties, we look at edges properties, we look at how 2 nodes interact, right, how say 3 nodes interact, and so on. We don't go further. Okay. So we look at different properties of nodes, for example degree, centrality, we will discuss what is centrality later, right, and so on. We look at how 2 nodes interact, right, and this is called a dyadic level of interaction. We will look at how 3 nodes interact, this is called triadic level of interaction, right. For example, say this is a triadic level of interaction, or this is another type of triadic level of interaction, right. This is another type of triadic level of interaction, and so on. So we look at dyadic level of interaction, triadic level of interaction, and we also look at egocentric circle. We have already discussed what is ego network, right. We will see that, say let's say this is a ego network, okay, and let's say this is the structure, okay, and this is ego, and these are the alters, okay. So you see that here there is a circle, okay, meaning a closely connected nodes, right. This is also a closely connected group, okay. So these are called circles, egocentric circles. This is also a kind of a microscopic level view, because you are only looking at a particular node and its surrounding neighbors, and that's all, okay. Now let's look at macroscopic level, the entire network as a whole, right. We can think of number of nodes, degree distribution. Okay, the term degree distribution may not be very familiar to you, but we will discuss in the next chapter. There is something called the diameter of a network, which is the longest shortest path, right. You may have heard about something called shortest path. You take a pair of nodes and look at the shortest path. You take all pairs of nodes, right. You can see which one is the longest, right. So this is the diameter. That's called the diameter of a network. It's a network property. Similarly, you can think of edge density of a network, right. How many edges can be formed, how many edges can be possible in a network of node n number of nodes, nc2, and how many edges are actually there in the network, right. So you take a fraction of actual number of edges divided by, the fraction of actual number of edges and the possible number of edges, and that will give you something called edge density, right. So this is basically looking at the network as a whole, macroscopic level. In between microscopic and macroscopic, there is something called mesoscopic view of a network, okay. And what is this? Mesoscopic view, we look at specific regions of a network. For example, I already mentioned about something called clusters or communities, where multiple nodes interact together frequently and form a dense group, right. You can think of this as a mesoscopic structure of a network. You have multiple such communities, and these communities then form the entire network, right. You can also think of something called network motifs. And this motif structure is very useful in biological network particularly, where now what is motif? Motif is basically a recurrent substructures which appear in a network, right? For example, if you think of this, so this is a star network, right? And the star network appears very, very frequently in a network. So that network gives you a separate indication. If you see a chain, this is a chain, right? This chain, this is called chain motif, right? Now, if you see a lot of such chain motifs present in a network, that network can be different from a network having a lot of star motifs, for example, right? So again, motif analysis is a different, direction of network analysis in general, which we are not covering because this is more related to biological network. So, but of course, in social network also we have studied, we see plenty of cases where motifs are useful. Now, if you look at the science of network analysis, so the question that we ask is that are these properties common across networks? Let's say you take a Facebook network and you take a protein-protein interaction network, right? And you see that some of the properties are, some of the microscopic, mesoscopic, macroscopic properties are common across networks. Then what do you conclude, right? Would you be able to conclude that these two networks are same or have similar properties? What are the different properties, right? So the question that we ask is that can we formulate a general theory of the structure, evolution, and the dynamics of a network? Okay. The common observed property, the common observed property that we often see in a network includes something called small world property. Okay, we will discuss in the next chapter what is a small world property. It basically says that the world is very small, meaning that if you want to move from one node to another node, you don't need to traverse a lot. Okay, and there is a very interesting property called 6 degree of separation. Okay, it basically says that there are 6 hops on an average between any pair of nodes in the network. Okay, we'll also discuss something called scale-free property. Right, we'll discuss clustering, community structure. We'll discuss something called the robustness of a network, robustness of a network to different attacks, different adversarial attacks. We'll discuss something called cascade effect. Okay, the vulnerability to different cascading failure. For example, say there is a power grid, electric power grid, and suddenly you see that one node has got damaged, right? And if one node got damaged, it may happen that this damage may get propagated through the entire network, right? Entire power grid, but that will create devastation, right? So we'll need to stop such power failure, such failure of nodes, right? So what would be the strategies through which we can stop the spread of such failure? So this course will cover all these things in different chapters, and we will basically learn different mathematical formulations, properties which can define these characteristics of a network. Now, this is a motivational slide. I'm pretty sure that you don't need to, I don't need to motivate you why social media has become a part and parcel of our life. If you see the user engagement over time, right, right from say the year 2002, 2021, 2022, there is a massive growth, an exponential growth of usage, particularly during this lockdown time, this pandemic time, right? And a lot of content are being generated every minute, right? So people sometimes say that social network is a proxy of our society, right? You see many cases where people take opinion, public poll, right? You may have been invited to vote for certain polls, right? Certain decision, right? And on in the online social media, since you are observing the patterns, you are observing the different opinions, you are consuming different informations in different ways, right? You are one of the stakeholders, right, who can participate in this polling, right? So therefore, this is very important. Okay. So these are the applications that we will also cover in this particular lecture. We will cover something called node classification, where we classify nodes depending upon the properties. We predict links, right? This is also called recommendation, link recommendation, or and link recommendation has a lot of applications in the product recommendation, friendship recommendation, ad recommendation, and so on. We will discuss something called the growth and virality of messages, right, of networks in general. We will discuss node-centric, network-centric properties, personalized properties of nodes. We discuss how misinformation spreads over social network. We discuss how how you can identify nodes which are abnormal, for example, say fraud nodes, right, fraud users. And there is something called anomaly detection, through which we look at how we can identify such fraud nodes or outlier nodes. Now, this is the tentative course content that we are going to cover in this lecture series. We will start by by measuring a network. We quantify in the next lecture. We will try to quantify a network. Then we will discuss something called network formation. We will discuss many such models through which you can actually mimic the way a network is formed, a way a network evolves over time, right? We will discuss random growth model. We will discuss preferential attachment models and many such models. Those models are mostly borrowed from physics, but they are highly applicable here in social network as well. We will discuss link analysis, where you specifically look at how to characterize a link, an edge, right? And how we will see how different social theories are basically are useful to characterize a link. Okay. We will discuss community detection. Community or cluster is a very important property of a network, and we will see how we can detect communities efficiently. We discuss something called link prediction. Okay, and we have already mentioned the application in recommendation system, but the problem is, when we need to predict something for future, given that we have network at the current timestamp, this is difficult because you don't know what's going to happen, right? So link prediction is very, very challenging, and we'll discuss some some algorithms which have become very popular because of their the way they basically work. We discuss network effect and cascade behavior, particularly how this epidemic spreads over network, online and offline network. We discuss network-based anomaly detection. Anomaly detection or abnormality detection is also studied in data mining, but when it comes to network structure, approaches are very different, and we will see how we identify anomalous nodes, anomalous entities. It can be anomalous edges, it can be anomalous subgraphs, right, from the network. Then we will discuss a very interesting, in fact, this is a recent trend in network analysis, something called graph representation learning, network representation learning, GRL, okay, in short. So we will see how a network is mapped to an embedding space, right, to an Euclidean space, for example, right? And when you map a network to a vector space, say on an Euclidean space, things would become very easy. For example, now a node is represented by a vector, right? So you can do a whole bunch of vector operations, matrix multiplication, and so on and so forth to solve different applications. But to understand this chapter, you need to know a basics of deep learning, basics of machine learning. Don't need to go into details of that, but a basics of machine learning and deep learning might be useful. And then we will conclude this lecture by giving you ideas about some applications. For example, fraud detection. We look at fraud detection particularly, right? We will look at something called collusion, black market driven activities in online social network, how you can detect such activities. We will also discuss very briefly about recommender systems, right? Particularly friendship recommendation system and so on, right? So these are the prerequisites. So it is highly recommended that you learn Python programming. You I assume that I'm assuming that you have a fair bit of ideas about probabilities and statistics. I mean, probability statistics 101 is good enough. Again, I am assuming that you have ideas, basic ideas about linear algebra, particularly matrix operations. You have ideas about basic algorithm design, right? And it would be great if you also learn basics of machine learning and deep learning. Okay. With this, I would like all of you to learn together the skill of networking. Thank you.